Hello, everyone. This is your host, Egyptian Perspective here, and today I wanted to discuss a certain topic with you that is very relevant today. I wanted to discuss the curious case of the re-emergence of the now referred to Egyptian American comedian Bassem Youssef, formerly known as Dr. Bassem Youssef, an Egyptian doctor and medical school professor in Egypt who re-emerged on the media scene following the horrific war on Gaza Strip and the war crimes being committed there by the Israeli occupation forces, where he appeared on the Piers Morgan show, as you can see here. This was the first interview on that topic, and again on the round two, as they called it. Um, and he, after which, he exploded in popularity for his defense, quote unquote, of the Palestinian cause. And while I wholeheartedly support anyone who is willing to advocate the Palestinian cause, I just find it hard to believe that it would be Bassem Youssef of all people. And today we're going to explore why I said that. Now, first of all, who is Bassem Youssef? Now, Bassem Youssef, is, as I mentioned, is a medical doctor and professor. And during the events of the 2011 civil revolt against the President Hosni Mubarak, former president, like many other concerned Egyptians, he decided to start making YouTube videos on his personal channel, where this one right here, where he called it a B plus, which is possibly a pun, upon both his name Basim and B plus, as he was a medical professor. So, B plus. So, and I remember how good it was for what it was. I mean, it was a very simple format, and it was on YouTube. Yet it had some great quality for the time, and um, it had a similar fashion to people like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, where they Jon Stewart in particular, as later on mentioned by Bassem Youssef himself, to be the inspiration behind it. And it exploded in the Egyptian scene for his, quite frankly, brilliant comedic timing. He does have brilliant comedic timing, but most importantly, its sincerity. Like a very particular episode that I'm referring to here, um, which is titled "مش هتشمت فينا يا ريس" or "You will not gloat at us, Mr. President," where the Hosni Mubarak apologetics were starting to, as the political parties against him that were involved in the civil revolt actually started to bicker among themselves, and have, you know, problems with each other. They started to gloat, and he gave a heartfelt message on that particular topic, and this was what he had to say.
لان احنا نستاهل اكتر بكتير قوي من كده، احسن بكتير قوي من كده. انت في ايدك ان انت تخلي الخوف ياكلك ويأثر عليك ويخوفك من التاني، وتخلي الناس بتوع معلش يا ريس، احنا اسفين يا ريس، والنبي يا ريس.
We deserve, he is saying, for of course in Arabic, because all people won't understand what he's saying, but he's saying we deserve better than this, we deserve much better than this. Do not it's up to you to make those apologetics who keep saying you were right, Mr. President, you were correct, to gloat at us and make us look like make us hate each other and be afraid of each other.
ارجع لنا يا ريس يكسبوا، وفي ايدك ان انت تكسر دايرة الخوف والتربص ديت.
It's up to you to break the circle of fear and mistrust, which is a very sincere. He looks sincere, and as such, he exploded in popularity. That uh, for that sincerity and for that brilliant comedic timing. And after this explosion in popularity, he managed to get his own TV show, and which a lot of people were excited for, including yours truly. For we remember his great work on YouTube. However, what was weird is that the TV show was on TV, and now for those of you who do not know who what on TV is, it's an Egyptian network, and an Egyptian network that was at some point was funded by this guy, Naguib Sawiris. Now, Naguib, for those of you who are not involved in Egyptian politics, who do not know who Naguib Sawiris is a businessman who is like deep, who has deep connections, deep, like really deep connections with the deep state in Egypt. He's basically one of Mubarak's men. I, I mean, at the end of the day, he serves himself and no one else, but he had some great connections with the Egyptian regime. So it was really weird that Naguib Sawiris, of all people, would be interested on a political satire show that was basically against the regime. And not only that, it is currently, as of 2016, as of 2016, since 2016, it is now actually owned by the General Intelligence Service, which is literally basically the CIA in the United States. It is the equivalent for it in Egypt. So it's basically a state-run media. And you can see here Bassem Youssef right there as one of the anchors. He wasn't exactly an anchor, but he had the show there. So there were a lot of red flags at the time. But, we did not think too hard about it, and we thought, like, we were naive. We were all naive at the time, and we thought that the old times are over and that we should be able to move forward. Maybe Naguib Sawiris has changed. I mean, kind of too hopeful to believe, but you know. So, uh, reality hits, and the show progressively devolved into a hit piece against the at the time current regime of Mohammed Morsi, who is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Um, and for those who might argue that that regime was not particularly popular, which is true, there are things that need to be considered. Regardless of what you believe and what your opinion is when it comes to the regime, it was the very first to be elected in actual fair elections since the inception of the republic. Now, I'm not a Republican myself. I'm a royalist. Uh, I might get into in another video on what that means and what the idea behind it is, but I'm not a Republican. I don't believe in republics. I believe it's a failed way of running things, but that's not really up to me. The people have decided that this is a republic, which was a weird thing to do afterwards. Is that the very moment that you have a fair election, now you just want to throw everything down the gutter. That was really weird. If you are going to elect someone, that someone underperforms, then you call for new elections, and or you just wait for the next election, which would have been in just 4 years. People couldn't even wait 4 years. It, the man was in power for less than a year. I mean, hardly a year. He did complete a year, and it was uh, like he was being hampered every step of the way. And I do not care. I do not care what people think of the Muslim Brotherhood. That's up to interpretation. That's up to your opinion and your political views, and I respect that. But that's not how you do things in a democracy. You wanted this to be a democracy, then you cannot just go and do whatever you want. Uh, you can you cannot call for a democratic process, then just throw that democratic process down the trash the moment you don't like how things are going. That's just, you know, quite frankly stupid, and we are paying for it right now. We're paying for it today. But regardless, the most important part on today's topic is that the show was no different from other comedy shows, and I use that term loosely. For example, we have here there was this absolutely horrible show called Benny Adam show by a comedic actor, and I use that term loosely as well, Ahmed Adam, who is a so-called comedic actor and in Egypt, and he always had a terrible, uh, comedic timing. He was just, I have no idea how he managed to get his own show, and there were others too. Here are two of them, Ahmed Riz and Hani Ramzi, making fun of the because there was a slight, and I mean a very slight increase in natural gas, prices, and I do mean very slight. And the funny part is, these two were willing to do this little shit show that they had for a slight, high increase in that price, but because it was raised to £8, 8 Egyptian pounds, but the price today is 70 Egyptian pounds. It went from 8, and they were unhappy with 8, and now it's 70, and they made absolutely no remarks. But now I'm getting sidetracked, and I'm sorry about that. So Bassem Youssef, his show was absolutely no different. It was basically the same thing, just basically just making fun of the Muslim Brotherhood regime. It devolved into a hit piece against them. And again, I respect everyone's opinion. That's not the point here. The point is, he um, was talking about how much he would prefer a democratic process. Then he had no problem, absolutely, on just devolving into a hate piece against a specific group of people. And he did only go against a specific group of people, regardless that, that afterwards, that very same person, same person, Bassem Youssef, would have no problem in celebrating, the protests against Morsi that had cops in it. I want you to imagine that. Imagine these cops that were shooting at people in 2011, not so long ago, just 2 years ago. But by the way, the police forces were not reprimanded or changed in any way or fashion, or because nobody had time to do that. He only was only a president for a year. So these were the very same police forces that shot and killed uh, tens of people in 2011. These are the people that he had no problem in celebrating the protests they were involved in. Actually, I don't know if I can show you that, but let's see. Let's see, cops in Egyptian protests 2013. No. So uh, no, not these ones. It was no, not these. These are the other protests where they shot and killed people. No, I wanted to see the others where they were carried. Hold on. Here we go. So they carried those police on their shoulders in the protests. You know, the very same police that were shooting at people not so long ago. No problem. Here are the police in protest. Now imagine that. Imagine the security forces of a country actually protesting the the regime that they are supposed to be a part of. Uh, Now, that might be an indicator for some people that the regime was unpopular, but just remember, these are the very same cops that were defending fiercely the previous regime. The very same. These are not some new people. There was no change in that in their structure, in the security forces structure. It's the very same structure. So Bassem Youssef had no problem with those. He had no problem. So then, the turmoil in Egypt continued, and thanks to the very successful smear campaign by the deep state, coupled with the failure of the regime to contain the situation and political failure on multiple fronts, the major players in the deep state made their move, ousting Morsi and killing the revolution in its grip, in its infancy, basically, and successfully restoring their control over the state. Now, not unopposed, though, as people protested in many places, including and the most famous one, most important one, in Rab'a Square in Medinat Nasr, in Nasr City. Now, where at least 100,000 people were there. It's possibly more, but let's say at least 100,000 people were gathered in Rab'a Square. Now, he himself continued the smear campaign against the protesters, even though he was one of the people who participated in 2011, so he should have no problem in people expressing their opinion in protest. But because these are his political rivals, he saw fit to smear them. No problem. He has absolutely no problem doing so. And on 14 August in 2013, the so-called security forces I mentioned, in support by the military, opened fire on protesters in the street, killing hundreds. As you can see in this report by Human Rights Watch, which is it blatantly says that it is likely a crime against humanity, and it is, as they basically surrounded the people in the streets and from all sides and started firing at them. That's not, rubber bullets or anything or tear gas. No, I mean actually fired rifles and pistols at them, live rounds, and people were killed. The official number was, you know, 817, 817, but it is likely that more than 1,000 were killed. We will, could we would never know the actual numbers. However, the Egyptian officials at the time tried to, justify the dispersal of the Rabaa sit-in by claiming that it disturbed lives of local residents and provided a forum of incitement of and terrorism and site for demonstrators to detain and abuse opponents. However, the killing of 817 or more protesters was clearly disproportionate to any threat to local residents, security personnel, or anyone else. Now, also, government officials have claimed that the use of force came in response to violence, including gunfire by protesters. Human Rights Watch found that in addition to the hundreds of protesters who threw rocks and Molotov cocktails at police once the assault began, demonstrators fired on police in at least a few instances. According to the official Forensic Medical Authority, 8 police officers were killed during the Rabat dispersal. After fully dispersing the sit-in on August 14, Interior Minister Mohammed Ibrahim announced that his forces had found 15 guns. 15 guns in 100,000 people protest. A figure that, if accurate, indicates that few protesters were armed and further corroborates the extensive evidence Human Rights Watch compiled that police gunned down hundreds of unarmed protesters. Now, I could go on, but I would prefer to leave you the link of the article by Human Rights Watch so that you can read yourself on that event. Now, clearly a horrific event. What is considered one of the worst events of killing protesters in history. And what does Bassem Youssef do exactly? He does this.
سيسي طرقع باين قرر يفشخ الإخوان قال له معاك يومين كمان قال له أحب تعمل كده ليه معايا شرعية تمشي ليه ما هو عند الشعب ونزل الشعب حرق للشعب وكمل لعبه وسقف غدرته لم جماعته لبس ده في الشلة بتاعته وبالصندوق وسيبنا يسوق قتل.
Now, I want you to consider that this song and dance routine was released only days after the aforementioned situation here that I just mentioned on Rabaa, where hundreds of his own countrymen, regardless of their position in life, regardless of what they are, regardless of what they believe in and their opinion was, were gunned down in the hundreds for protesting, mostly armed. Now remember, the official police numbers of 15 firearms, 15, and 900 people or even 1,000 people were gunned down for 15 armed people. Kind of ironic when you consider his position, talking about the proportionate response in Gaza and the situation in Gaza, when he was talking about how what is the proportion for how much civilians that should be killed in order to get rid of the actual armed personnel. Kind of ironic, Bassem, wouldn't you agree? And he had no problem in dancing and having fun. And
والسيسي سيبنا يسوق أدى الغازو بفرح الشعب
والسيسي لعبها صح الإخوان ابتدوا بالدح
بفرح الشعب
والسيسي لعبها
وكمل اللعب وسقفنا وسناب الشلة بتاع أدى الغازو بفرح الشعب
والسيسي لعبها صح الإخوان معاك يومين كام قال له معاك يومين كام قال له معاك يومين قرر
saluting. He's saluting the man who did this, is Sisi. As you can see here. This is not satire. This is inhumanity, is what this was. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to discuss this again, but I want to move forward. So, afterwards, after that despicable display of gloat and complete lack of humanity and utter disrespect to the calamity of death, I mean, at least respect people's dying man. The man who was speaking of unity just 2 years ago, just a couple of years ago, is now celebrating the murder of, his political rivals. And obviously he was handsomely rewarded afterwards, and I'm being sarcastic here, by that very same man he's saluting here, who kicked him out of the country. And he ran away to the United States because he flew too close to the sun and decided to, make a piece on El Sisi too. Now, some people argue then, he was doing his job. No, what happened is Sisi was even much worse than Morsi ever was, and as such, he started to, make comments about that in his show. Now, he had no problem in absolutely trashing El Sisi when no one was stopping him, but the very same moment that someone stopped him and told him, no, you cannot do that, your job here is done, he was actually done. When no one was stopping him, he had no problem in doing this despicable display of unhumanity. But when someone stopped him, he ran scared, like a scared dog, with his tail between his legs. Now, I want to show you something. On YouTube, there is this guy, Youssef, or he calls himself, or Joseph. He calls himself Joe. This guy has his own show, Joe Show. Now, I'm not a big fan of his comedic timing. His comedic timing isn't that great. But why I'm showing you this, I actually don't watch his show. But why I'm showing you this is because Joe was actually inspired by the same, way Bassem Youssef was doing things, and decided to launch his own show. Now, Joe is, for the most part, is actually was a supporter of the Morsi regime, and a lot of people ridiculed him for it. Not that I care, not really my problem. After all, as I said, everyone is entitled to his own opinion. The difference here is Joe was actually under the same threats that Bassem Youssef received. So did Joe stop? No. After he left the country, Joe continued to do his work. Now, what was Bassem Youssef doing when he left the country? Now, Bassem Youssef already left the country. He was no longer in any danger from El Sisi. So, what does he do? Absolutely nothing. Unlike Joe here, who continued to this day producing his product that I don't know. He apparently he's quite successful now. I mean, around 1.8 million views. That's I mean, good on you, Joe. But uh, uh, back then he wasn't as successful. Uh, but Bassem Youssef, quite literally disappeared completely from the scene. He was doing some fitness and cooking shows, and those are who are familiar with the situation know very well that he did not reappear until the debacle that was the Cleopatra TV show, and where he started talking about why aren't Egyptians are allowed to discuss their own history, which is a very valid point. I have no problem with that. The thing is, he absolutely stopped doing what he is supposedly doing based on a faith in a certain cause. The man who was so sincere
واخيرا
here is now, you know what? No. I'm just gonna sit on the sidelines. A bit spineless, if I may say so myself. Now, regardless, he wants to continue. He doesn't want to continue. That's up to him. It's just I find it very kind of weird that this person who has displayed, not only gloating against his political rivals and people he doesn't like, even though just 2 years prior he was advocating for us to see each other as humans and to break that circle of fear, so that the apologetics of the prison. By the way, he did exactly the opposite of what he was telling people to do here. He did exactly the opposite of it. That's my point. Bassem Youssef contradicts himself constantly. Here he tells people to break the circle of fear and not to submit to it, and here he is committing exactly that cycle of fear. In this video he look
ده ما كانش مقفول على فكرة.
هم قفلوه لما
لا، ما كانش مقفول.
هم قفلوه
لا،
عشان
كان مفتوح.
يمنعوا
تعرف اينشتاين قال لك ايه؟ الغباء ان انت تحاول تعمل نفس الحاجه وتفشل وتفضل
For those who do not know what he was talking about in this particular video, he is arguing with his own staff who are telling him that what happened, that was not okay, and he was saying, well, what did you expect the cops to do? They were doing they were doing vandalism and stuff like that. He is actually adopting the security forces' story here. And can you imagine that this guy, who, by the way, in 2011, that's exactly what the protesters did. The protesters were actually in the street, and the cops were claiming that they were committing vandalism and they are trying to create unrest and all that stuff. That was in 2011, and that's why they shot at people and killed people. And the same thing is happening here, and he's okay with it. He was not okay with it in 2011, but now he's okay with it because it's his political rivals. Again, another contradiction. He told people not to submit to fear and to start to work together. Then at the very moment he gets a chance not to do that, he doesn't do that. Then he participates in 2011 in these protests. Then he immediately reverts on that position the moment his political rivals are doing the same things that were done in 2011, and calling them that they were not you know, they were creating unrest. That's a very weird thing to do. So, and then we come to his opinions on Gaza. Now, when he re-emerged and started talking on Gaza, and here
Why do you
in-
why do you get
I'm not saying
I'm
you
not their
are.
spokesman.
You're talking
I
to me.
fucking hate them.
Bassem,
Fuck Hamas.
you are-
'Cause
you are-
so much
تمام. Yeah, as you can see here, he is quite literally. I mean, he said a lot of good stuff in that interview, but then we come to that point where he clearly states that he hates Hamas. Now, regardless of what people's take is on the topic, Hamas are a resistance movement. It doesn't matter what anyone says, they are a resistance movement. They were created by the conflict. They are not the instigators of the conflict. This conflict has been going on for 75 years. Bassem Youssef said so himself. If you are watching this video, then you are likely to know who Bassem Youssef is and what he said on that topic. If not, then watch these interviews. Now, this was ongoing for 75 years. You cannot expect people, if you make peaceful protest impossible, you make violence inevitable, and that's exactly what the apartheid regime in the occupied lands in Palestine, the Israeli regime is doing, and so you cannot blame the resistance for resisting. That doesn't make any sense. But then he goes on also with Piers Morgan to say this.
I don't know.
you cannot create terrorism and then you
I don't know.
you have they have created
Would
this.
you,
So he clearly states calling them to terrorists. He said that's the you cannot create terrorism. He is literally calling the resistance terrorists here, and actually he tries to make it satire here, but
Pierce, I am at a disadvantage here. I can hear you, I cannot see you. I am in a claustrophobic room, and so please cut me some slack. Here you is like
in a way,
mess. I can go on and on and on. No music festival, no the occupation of the West Bank.
pretends that
hear
I
you
know. I
saying-
know that what you're
I'm at a disadvantage here. Cut me some air.
Understand.
Because if you do you want to do that,
interrupting you. I thought I was having you.
I think that no military force in the world would say, so if you want me to you, Pierce, 1,000, no paragliding in Palestine, absolutely no control in the West Bank, and name of Hamas.
Right.
A reason for everything. And you know what? Let's for a minute like it has absolute Palestinian case. No paragliding, no Hamas. I can go on and on and on and on.
No, but you don't
about
need
the
to,
West
because
Bank.
in a way you're preaching to the choir. I've followed this choir, saying it has validity, of course.
I can hear you, I cannot see you. I am at my point.
Sure.
So because this has to be fair.
Understand.
Because if you want to only hear your opinion, I can just condemn Hamas and go home. I can do that.
you know, in the interview, as you can see, he makes a lot of valid points. I have no problem with that. The problem with it, as I showed you in those videos, and again, this is not the only instance of him saying something like that. Here we go.
That
for example.
there's so many money coming in, and just like Hamas used it in order to make weapons.
There's people of Hamas who are literal billionaires living in Qatar, flying around on private jets. How do you explain that?
They're horrible people, and I don't condone them. All right.
Okay.
I'm talking.
See, he again expresses his feelings about the Hamas, where he says, these are horrible people, I do not condone them. First of all, this Israeli mouthpiece is wrong here. Yes, they do have billions of dollars, but they do not fly on private jets, and we have seen the kind of transport that they have to use. They cannot use public transport, you moron. They're not exactly in a secure position. That's first of all. Second of all, this all of this turned out to be bollocks anyway. A lot of people kept calling them names. And third of all, um, the so-called billionaires, Palestinians are not poor, in case you don't know. And I'm not talking about just Hamas. No, I'm talking about that the Palestinians are literally not poor. Many of them have many dollars. The problem isn't the money. The problem is that there is nowhere to spend it. There is no airport. There is no port. There is no farming equipment that can be brought in. There is nothing that can be brought in. The roads are closed. Israel controls the water, the gas, the electricity, everything. And they cut off all of that. That's the problem. Was never the money. You can actually see how many luxurious cars that are in Gaza. People can and do have money. They just have nowhere to spend it because everything that comes into the strip is controlled by Israel. And I mean everything: food, gas, electricity, water, farming equipment, industry equipment, and like I stated, no port, no airport, no roads. How exactly do you suppose that these people can have an economy of any sort? So, this right here, and what does Bassem Youssef say? Does he try to make that point? Does he try to talk about that point? No, of course he doesn't. The only thing he says, oh, those are bad people and I do not condone them. Okay, Bassem. Fine. Then we come to this video right here.
Anything to do with current events. It's fine. They have like about 6 or 7 families, uncles and cousins and stuff. It's fine. It's you're part of farms who have limits, and I have because in Egypt I said
partly because of a couple of interviews you've done recently about Israel Gaza. You did one with Piers Morgan that got millions and millions of views. How do you feel about that role now, of sort of, you know, the voice of a dispossessed?
Well, as I said before in one of my interviews, I have seen this movie before. Because in Egypt, I when I switched from medicine, I had my own television show. The show was very successful, and suddenly I was told the same things. You're the voice of the people, or the voice of the revolution. I said, guys, I'm a comedian, please.
You were the Jon Stewart of Egypt.
And I said, and here's the problem: when people get so frustrated with a certain issue, with a certain topic, and they find someone that they can resonate with, they put all of their hopes and dreams and all of their expectations on that person. And at the end of the day, you're a human being, and you have limits, and I have limits. And at a certain point, like I did in Egypt, I couldn't continue anymore. So I kind of bailed out because it was not safe. It was too much for me. Here I found myself in a position where I'm defending a cause that I've never been part of. You know, I'm not a Palestinian. You know, I'm married to someone who's half Palestinian, and even she's not even active about it. Her main concern is about the kids, basically. But I found myself being into that position.
I mean, your wife had.
So, Bassem Youssef here is stating that he has seen this movie before, and that people gave him too much of a responsibility that were beyond his limits. And so when it was no longer possible for him to continue, people blamed him. Well, dear Bassem, and I really hope that you get that message. I know that maybe not being this is my first video on this channel, and hopefully not the last, but I really hope that many people would deliver this message to you if possible. And I hope that people really did not get bored and click away, being this video as long as it is. But dear Bassem, here is a message to you. No one was expecting you to do anything beyond human. In fact, the problem that I have with you, I'm not going to talk about other people because other people have different points of view. So I'm just going to talk about my point of view on why I was greatly disappointed with you, which turned me from a huge fan to someone who absolutely disgusted by you. What I was expecting of you was to simply act like a decent human being and nothing more. I wasn't expecting you to be my voice. I wasn't expecting you to express my views because I have my own voice and I can, alhamdulillah, express my own views. But I did expect you to act like a human being. I did not expect you to be laughing and dancing as people were killed. I did not expect that. I did not expect you to go back on your word time and time and time again. You were the one who told us in your great sincere video of asking us to break the circle of hate, then immediately submit to the circle of hate. You contradicted yourself multiple times on multiple occasions. And quite frankly, I find you to be a spineless coward because you were away out of Egypt. You were safe and decided not to do anything with it. The truth of the matter is, it got too heated for you and you wanted to stop. Then you should have stopped. You should not have reappeared or re-emerged. The reason that you did is probably selfish. You're doing it for clout. You're doing it so that you can profit from it. You were sitting on the sidelines for too long. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But you're gonna have to prove me wrong. So prove me wrong, Bassem. Do it. Admit your guilt. Admit that you were wrong. Admit the things that you said and did in Egypt were wrong. That you were wrong, that you did a lot of harm, that you did not respect people, that you did not act like a decent human being and respect people's death, regardless of who these people are. You, in your interview with Piers Morgan, was talking about the suffering of the Jews and how it should give a lesson to the Jews not to do the same to the Palestinians. That's something that you said. Yet you had no problem in using other people's suffering. You have no problem in adopting the Jewish point of view, but you have a problem with adopting let's say the Muslim Brotherhood point of view, or not just the Muslim Brotherhood, because these are not the only ones that he made fun of, but these are the people in discussion here that were murdered. So I want to ask you, Bassem, what do you think of that? I'm not expecting you to be the voice of anyone but yourself. And quite frankly, the voice you have given to yourself is quite despicable, honestly. Now, what do you have to say for yourself? And also, one more thing. If you think that it is too much for you to be in the center of attention in a certain topic, then do not be the center of attention in a certain topic. If you cannot take it, just simply sit back, because you will not be doing much good by committing harm in the way that you are doing. If you simply believe that you cannot do it, just don't do it. Instead of disappointing people such as myself. I never expected anything from you other than that. Just be a decent human being. Be a Muslim. Because Bassem, quite frankly, you're not a very good Muslim. I mean, of course, none of us are. But everyone should look after himself. You're not a very good Muslim, Bassem. And that's the truth. You're actually a liberal. What you are is a liberal, and you don't even realize it. And maybe you do realize it, and you just don't want to say it, because that's what you are. You have adopted the liberal values and points of views that the Americans use, even though that you yourself know and say that these values are a lie. You've said it in many interviews. In fact, in the beginning of this video, you had this to say.
Remember when 3,000 people killed in October was too much? Now it's 30,000. It doesn't matter now. 100,000, it doesn't matter. 300,000, it doesn't matter. We've been lectured by the West for so long about like the values of humanity and Declaration of Human Rights, and then we just see that doesn't apply to us. So kind of like you feel that maybe our people are very cheap and they don't matter.
That's what you had to say. So you know it's a lie. You know that these values are a lie. And you have no problem in following them. Maybe there will come a time where you realize, and I really do hope that, that you realize that what you did was wrong. But more importantly, there should come a time that you admit that you were wrong. And perhaps you can make something good come out of the situation that you are in. Right now, you are famous. Right now, maybe you should actually, for real this time, grow a spine and start advocating for the right causes. But that's just hopeful thinking. Sorry about the long video. This is going to be some sort of a new channel for myself where I express my opinions and try to give you the point of view of the culture I was raised in, and but at the end of the day, this is the opinion. This is my opinion. This is not the opinion of all Egyptians, and I respect if you do not view it as the single most source of the Egyptian point of view. However, I try as much as possible to bring about the point of view of my people, and as an Egyptian, we are very concerned about topics like this. I hope that people like the video. If they like the video, I hope people will give me their opinion and how to move forward from this. And I'm also hoping that people would subscribe. Wouldn't hurt. Thank you very much for watching this has been a very long video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.